The G7 wrapped up its annual summit in Germany with a raft of new pledges. Leaders from the group of the 7 richest democracies reiterated their support for Ukraine and agreed to target Russia's finances and raise the costs of Moscow's war. With that conflict wreaking havoc on food and energy supplies, they pledged more than 4 billion euros toward food security and committed to measures aimed at reducing and stabilizing global energy prices. We'd like to go on to that summit. Shona Murray, our correspondent over there in Germany. Shona, the first meeting of the G7 leaders since this outbreak of the war, with lots of support for Ukraine on show. Are there hopes for more new measures proposed at this summit that will slow down Russia's war machine?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's sort of the point of the sanctions, particularly those announced today, because I don't think anyone feels that they're ever going to influence Putin to change direction of the war. We heard at the very start a few days ago that the US has decided to sanction Russian gold, the UK also, and the EU has agreed to do that. Obviously needs 27 member states to confirm that it'll do that. And then we had this announcement confirmed again today that the G7 will pursue a price cap for oil and possibly gas, which will help stabilise the price of oil for developing countries and countries that are accessing Russian oil after the EU and Western sanctions, but also will reduce the price so that you reduce Russia's revenue and therefore slow down its war chest. There's really a feeling in the G7 that although Russia has been able to sell and make a lot of money from energy, that in the medium term the sanctions definitely will work. For example, there's strong sanctions against technologies that help the Russian army modernise, not just the army, but also the economy modernise as well. So they are confident that the sanctions are working, but I think there's probably a little bit of disappointment that Russia is still getting so much revenue from energy.
Yes, well, we're seeing some evidence of financial pressures on Moscow. Regarding the pledges on food and energy that we mentioned a few moments ago, what concretely could that money go for?
Well, it was different strands, I suppose. I mean, they said there was about 29 billion euro in total pledged for Ukraine for financial humanitarian assistance, for also the reconstruction of Ukraine. That was very much on top of the agenda here, that there will be a future for Ukraine and it will require no less than essentially a Marshall-type fund. But aside from that, we have seen the exportation of a food crisis as a result of the Russian blockade of the Black Sea, where important crops, wheat and so on, can't leave Ukraine, and this is obviously affecting low-income countries, developing countries, so that's hugely problematic. There was 4.5 billion euro pledged to deal with food security, but NGOs here attending say that's not near enough. And I caught up with Stefan Exo-Kreischer from the One campaign. He says they're very, very disappointed with this amount.
Actually pretty disappointed. If you looked at, they only committed 4.5 billion US dollars in new money at this summit, and then calculated in total, also counting old money, they said they came up with 14 billion US dollars to tackle the hunger crisis, and that's far from enough. The World Food Programme alone needs more than 20 billion US dollars this year. So I would have liked to see much more ambition from the G7 leaders on tackling the immediate humanitarian crises, and I would have liked to see some more concrete proposals, or at least ideas, of how to unblock Ukrainian ports to ensure that the grain that is there and it's so desperately needed on the African continent, that it's actually getting there.
And that's Stefan Exo-Kreischer from the One campaign, echoing what I've heard from a lot of NGOs, that 4.5 billion euro won't go far enough to deal with the food insecurity and crisis that's emerging from the Ukraine war, but on top of that, because of climate change, because of famine and so on. So they're bitterly disappointed about what is being pledged here in Bavaria.